Welcome, everybody, to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Now, before we do this topic, did you go get any of your university paraphernalia, like sweatshirt, letter jacket? Do you really, did you bury yourself in the part?
No.
You didn't?
No.
No.
But you know what? I do have Oregon State stuff because I'm an alumni from there and a big fan. And so, yeah, I'll pretend like I'm wearing my Oregon State gear.
That's good.
Rah, rah.
That's good. I have a giant foam finger right now.
That's
It's making it hard to type, but... we are talking about ADHD and the college student. 'Tis the season. We're getting ready to go back to school, or,
or close.
Many people are getting ready to go back to school. And for those, whether you're a traditional age or an adult student going back to school, these are, you have a new set of circumstances and pressures that challenge you if you are struggling with ADHD. And that's what we're going to talk about and what Nikki can do to help you put some sanity to this whole brave new world.
That's right. Yes. And I'm very excited about talking about this service because this is something that I've done for the last couple of years along with my ADHD coaching. But it's something new that we are going to actually be talking more about or highlighting more on the new website. So it's a great time to talk about it, especially as we get closer to fall. So, I think that probably it would probably help to just sort of get an understanding of how ADHD coaching works for the college student. Would that make sense, I think, to kind of...
Yeah, I think so. I wonder if we could reflect just before we start on kind of the practicalities of the coaching.
Sure.
If we could talk just a little bit about kind of why it is that college students are a sort of a different kind of classification of ADHD. Isn't ADHD, or why is it that college students get special treatment?
Why
if you're
do
going
they have
back
a
to
special
school?
category?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think the biggest difference between ADHD coaching and ADHD coaching a college student is really that main goal is centered around school and academics. And so, having these ADHD challenges and going into the academic field for 4 years or 2 years or however long it's going to take you to get your college degree or associate's degree, whatever it is that you're reaching for, can be overwhelming, I guess is probably the best word to say. You've got a goal in mind, but it's going to take a lot of hard work to get there. And coaching can definitely be a resource to help that student get there. It's not the only resource, but it can definitely be one that can help. Especially for the student who is younger, who's coming right out of high school, this is their first time of being on their own. They don't have mom and dad, telling them when to get up. They don't have mom and dad making sure that their homework is done. Are you studying? There's a lot of new responsibility that's coming up for these kids that it can be a struggle. And so we want to start their college career, their academic career on a positive note. And coaching is one way to definitely do that. But I would say that the biggest difference, between ADHD coaching and coaching the college student is that ultimate goal of you want to get that degree. How are you going to get it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's this idea that your objectives become highly time sensitive.
Yes.
And not only do you have a long-term or sort of a medium-term goal of actually getting, accomplishing a degree, or some sort of certification, but the intermediary goals, the short-term goals, multiply. And you have so many details to keep in your head and to keep organized and to keep straight, and so many little milestones and papers and assignments and quizzes and tests and things to keep straight that familiar sense of ADHD overwhelm can become just a generalized sense of terror.
Absolutely. Well, and you have to think, I mean, the students that I've worked with in the past, many of them don't even know how to use a planner. They've never had to. They've never
Right.
had to use a calendar. They've never had to manage their time or think about where they have to be on Wednesday. It hasn't been an issue for them. So all of these new skills are having to, form for them to succeed. And so, yeah, it can be overwhelmed, I think is probably the best word to describe it. Now, there's a lot of similarities to coaching a college student as you would coach anybody that has ADHD, and it's definitely a partnership between me and the client. It's time for us to explore what their strengths are, because many of them don't know what their strengths are, and so figuring out what's working, what has worked, and then building off of that success so that they can see, okay, I can do this. They have somebody who's really a cheerleader. They're, I'm championing them, through this. You can do this. You are more than capable. And really getting an idea of how their ADHD affects them. I mean, this is something that we talked about last week when we were talking about hyperfocusing, and it's the same thing that I talk a lot about when I'm coaching clients is, how does this affect you? How does this work for you? How does it work against you? And really getting an understanding of how their brains work. And Pete, you said it's not a wrong way to work, and it's not the right way to work. It's just who you are. And so how do we help you achieve your goals? And so my main goal is to definitely increase their self-awareness, give them support, help them determine the structure that they need, keep them accountable. There's a lot of accountability that happens in ADHD coaching for the college student, and just really a partner in helping them stay focused. And it often works better to have it come from a coach than to come from a parent, because they,
what an amazing thing.
I know, right?
You're telling me that parents aren't the ultimate influence on their children and their work habits? What?
That's right.
What?
I know.
I am shocked, madam.
I know. So there. I said it. Sometimes it comes better from a coach than a parent. Now, with that said, before I tell you a little bit about what we cover in coaching, I have to put this up front, because what happens is parents are typically the ones that are paying for the services, right?
Yeah.
And so I try to make it very clear up front what that relationship is going to look like between me and the student and the parent. These college students are adults, and so the conversations between me and that student are confidential. Just because the parent is paying for it doesn't necessarily mean that gives them the right to know everything that's going on, or for me to report back to them. Without the permission of the client, who is the student, I won't report back to the parent. It's really between the two of them to decide how that looks. And sometimes a parent can think that that's a bad thing or a good thing. It depends on how you look at it. But I think it's important that I say that up front, that just because you're paying for it doesn't necessarily give you the right to know everything. Well, it doesn't give you the right to know what's going on. You have to talk to your student about that. Now, in addition to that, I will have parents who will call me, and they're very excited about this service, and they think, oh, wow, this is going to help. This is going to make, Bobby, this is going to help him graduate. But if Bobby is not completely sold into this process, or he doesn't want this coaching, I can guarantee you it's not going to work. So the student has to really want this and really be committed to the process and be open to the process. You can't push them into it.
You can't buy commitment.
No. Yeah. And I, unfortunately, I've learned this the hard way. It just doesn't. I've seen both. I've seen it where it hasn't worked because the student wasn't really invested, and then I've seen it where the student was so invested and they graduated, and it was just such a proud moment for everybody involved. So you got to want it. That the student has to really want it.
Well, that makes good sense.
Yeah. So what do we cover? I mean, what are the things that we talk about when I coach college students? Basically, the number one thing is it's a lot of organizing. Can you believe it? We talk a lot about organizing. Helping them organize their schedule, helping them organize how they're going to deal with the overwhelm when they have too much homework, or they've got these big tests that they have to study for, or projects that they have to do, working with other students. How do you organize that so that you're the best team player that you can be? We talk a lot about prioritizing. We talk a lot about study skills, giving them tools and strategies to help them stay focused in school when you're actually listening to the lecture, and also when you're reading or you're trying to study. There's different things you can do to help that process, and all of this stuff is ADHD focused and friendly to that mind set. We also talk a lot about personal care, because again, sometimes these kids don't know that they need to take care of themselves. They stay up late, they don't eat well, maybe drink a little bit too much. I mean, you think about college and what that looks like when we were back in college, right?
That's funny. I don't actually remember it.
You don't remember it. That's exactly right.
That's terrible. That's not true. I take that back.
But it's definitely getting them to understand that proper nutrition, that exercise is all so important for them and their ADHD mind, and helping them stay focused and building those dopamines. Dopamine.
Understanding where the rewards are.
That's right.
This term gets bandied about, and I think it's worth at least noting as a category header here, if for nothing else. This idea of executive functioning comes in when working with college students. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of stuff with that, right? I mean, executive functioning is that memory, and it's starting projects and following through. And I don't have the list in front of me, so forgive me if I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff. It's a long list. Organizing, I know, is a piece of it. I mean, all of these things that I've already sort of touched upon has to do with those executive functions. So that is definitely a part of the education too to the student, is knowing, okay, hey, this isn't just you. I mean, this is a really common issue, and there are ways to work with this. And they're like, oh wow, writing the top 3 priorities and making a list. And I mean, I can actually do these things and not write everything that you have to do, for the rest of your life. I mean, there's just ways to get around some of this stuff so the overwhelm doesn't take over.
Yeah. There's a high level bullet in these executive function skills that I was introduced to by another wonderful expert, myriad whose real focus is specifically executive functioning skill, but it's this idea of metacognition, and metacognition is what is your ability to think about thinking. Right? Mm-hmm. How well are you able to step back and evaluate your actions and behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. And to do that soberly and clear-headedly, right? And that's something that is extremely challenging when you are introduced these other pressures that put a force on your ability to function through ADHD, right? Yeah. So I think that is a really important thing to note, that executive function is, it connects past experience to today, right? Are you able to take what you've learned and move forward? And so all the things that you're talking about here really roll into this incredibly important concept that coaching directly supports.
Absolutely.
We've talked about executive function at a high level before, but I think this coaching service for college students, and again, because this is when we started, we talk about this whole idea that that there are new, highly time-focused and firm deadlines and details that you have no control over. You simply must meet them if you want to meet your end objective. If you don't understand all these processes that that are going on in your own brain, it makes it very hard to meet those goals.
Well, and that's, unfortunately why the dropout rate for ADHD students is so high. Yeah. Is it because it gets to be too much? And so if a coach or, can help them kind of muddy through the waters or whatever, that can certainly help. And the other thing too, I think I want to make clear is that there are other resources for people to use. I know that many students have had accommodations with their IEP plans from high school to help them succeed, and universities and colleges can do the same. And so if a student is struggling with wondering, what kind of accommodations do I have, I can certainly help them assist, get them pointed to the right department to talk about that. Many colleges have ADHD support groups too that they can actually go and talk to other students who think like them and who are like them and get ideas from them as well. So there's a lot of resources for people so that you don't end up being that statistic that drops out, to help you get through it. One of the biggest differences that I see with this kind of coaching is the accountability piece. I do a lot of text messaging with these guys, with these students. There's a lot of text messages that go back and forth in between sessions, because typically we will meet once a week at the same time, and it's usually around 30 minutes. But in between is where a lot of the work happens. And so it's texting that person and saying, okay, what was your study plan today? How did you get your exercise in? How did this go? And what's the status on this? And just kind of helping them, remind them, and being that what I've been told anyway is it's just that little reminder of, oh, okay, yep, I got to do that. I forgot, and it gives them that little push to stay on task and to stay focused. And so the accountability is one of those things that I know we've talked in the past where it does end up in a lot of situations, it becomes your own responsibility and you don't need to have that much accountability. With students, I would say the accountability is pretty consistent until you graduate. That's just from my experience. Other coaches may say that's not true. But from what I've seen, I know the last student that I had just graduate, I was keeping tabs on him all the way up into the end.
Yeah.
Making sure the paperwork was in and signed.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing. It's not a nagging relationship. And that's what I think that, again, I want to make clear is that it's a partnership. It's not, it is a partnership, and it's just to help support them and guide them and give them that a little extra support that they need to see the graduation cap, at the end.
The thing I wanted to add, we talk about this, college students. I think it's easy to presume that we're talking about traditional age college students, right. 18 to 21. But, the population of people going back to higher education, only about 20% of all individuals in the United States that are enrolled in higher education are of traditional age. 20%. Mm-hmm. That's very, very small. What we're talking about really is a set of behaviors that if you are a college student, it doesn't matter how old you are going to be challenged with all of these environmental factors that will stress your functioning, your executive functioning, your ADHD, and that's what coaching can help. So I don't want to people to assume that we're just talking about, the 18 to 21, 22-year-olds.
I agree. And I'm glad you point that out, because I think that the additional stress to that is not only are they back to school, but most likely if they're older, they may be married, they may have children, and they may have another job,
right.
A full-time job or a part-time job. So absolutely, coaching can fit and help those folks as well, and deal with all of the other things that are going on, that balance.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good stuff. And I think this is a wonderful service. I'm so glad you're going to be talking more about this. And in fact, we're going to be taking, tis the season, as we said, we're going to be talking more about this, going back to school in the next couple of episodes. We're gonna share some more tips with what to do if you're going back to school, and how you can handle routines and schedules and technology and all sorts of wonderful things. So if you have if you yourself are going back to school, if you have friends, colleagues, or kids that are going back to school, these episodes are going to be good ones to jump into. So make sure you pass it around. Anything else we have for the people?
Nope, I think that's it.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
You can learn more about the show at takecontrolorganizing.com. You can subscribe to the show for free in iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. But we've got all the links over on the website, so you can check out over there. Join the conversation. Tell us what it's like for you going back to school at facebook.com/takecontroladhd or Twitter, takecontroladhd, or even Google Plus or Pinterest. We're everywhere. We're just everywhere. And I do want to add, thank you so much to a couple of very special people who have left us recent comments on iTunes. We have Casey O'Mara, who writes, "This podcast gives great tips for anyone who struggles with organization and focus. It's a good length to listen to while commuting to or from work. The hosts have a great rapport and share enjoyable personal anecdotes." So there you go. Personal anecdotes.
That's awesome.
I know, right? I just love that.
That's very cool.
For today, loves to listen. She says, "I found this podcast a few days ago and really love the playful interactions between the hosts, as well as the really practical information they relay to listeners. I'm listening to past podcasts, oh my goodness, as I prepare for a move, and I'm starting to stress out about what I will do when I get through them all. I think they only broadcast once a week. I just don't know if that will sustain my new addiction. Maybe I'll have to find a podcast that'll help me deal with anxiety."
Awesome.
Anyway, so great comments. We sure appreciate your iTunes comments. They really are, they're great support and great motivation for us too. So,
absolutely.
On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.